Hello, this is Kathy from the Daily Marker. How are you doing today? Thank you for watching my video. I want to show you, well, first I'm going to give myself a shout out. I'm teaching my coloring challenge road trip. It's the online version with OCC and it starts Monday. I'm super excited. You have lifetime access. In the meantime, today I'm showing you how I use this stencil. Whoops. How I use the stencil with some Gina K Designs ink and some watercolors. Super easy. The stencil's called PEONY Bouquet. And then I had this awesome little die cut, and I'll show you in the end, but I used a bow, tied it up. I really liked how this turned out. Here's PEONY Bouquet, and then I'm using the Warm Glow ink and just my good old-fashioned sponge dauber, and I'm just holding the stencil down with my hands, and I'm just getting that ink on there. I've done this before during my last 30-day coloring challenge, and it was so fun, and a lot of people like this technique, and I enjoy doing it. I'm not like Jennifer McGuire. I'm always coming up with new ideas. I like the tried and true old ideas. So I'm just getting that ink on there. I'm going to give it time to dry, and then I'm going to be using some distress inks to watercolor today. I'm only using one color on each leaf or petal, but the ink color shines up through and it looks like I used more than one color. So it's really simple. It's just such an easy thing. And I also inked it up in the top right-hand corner, so there's quite a few flowers to watercolor. So this is, I'm going to show you a few petals, and then I'm going to speed it up because I'm doing the same thing on each petal. So you saw I put down a light line of color on dry paper, and then I'm just wetting that down and pulling the color down a little bit. I'll zoom this in a little bit closer in a minute. And I spend a lot of time taking the color off of my brush because that's the way that I retain that sweet spot on each petal. And actually, I'll be talking more about that in the my road trip online class. It's only $20. I mean, what a value. Always, the online card classes are always such a valuable, and they have such great teachers. And it's a thrill and an honor to be taking my road trip online so anyone can attend. So I'm just moving on to the next petal, as you can see, getting that color on, bringing in a little bit more color, wetting my brush, removing the color, and then using more water to pull that down. The most important thing is to remove the color off your brush. So I have that first layer, then I get rid of the color, and then I water that down. So on every single thing on this, that is what I'll be doing. So it's just something to practice. Now, I always talk about stamp choices like song choice. Now, here you can see it much better. But the great thing about this is the petals are nice and large enough to get a nice wash, a sweet spot. You get that gradient color because I'm removing the color from my brush and then I'm using the water to pull it down. You can see how that works. Now, one thing to note, and you'll see this more, but there's, because this is a really cool stencil, there's a gap between each petal, each leaf, and I'm just closing the gap a little bit when I bring the paint in. You don't have to do that, but I just always like to tweak things a little bit. So you might notice, see that line, I'm just going over the ink a little bit with my brush, and then I'm just bringing the paint down. Now, the rest of this, since you've already seen it, I've edited out all the times that I rinsed my brush and dab the color off on my towel, just so that you can get like, I don't know, I think there's just something about watching it flow and not watching my hand dip in the water, dip on the, removing the color. There's just something about, it's like a meditative flow, I think. You tell me. But it takes a lot more time to do, and I feel like it's worthwhile to do that. Now see that line of color, how it went over the ink. And then I'm removing the color, but you're not seeing that. And see how you see the warm glow ink shine up through the distress ink. It actually looks like I used more than one color. But again, let me just impress, one color on every petal. So you're not working as hard. You don't have to bring another color in. So that's why I love this technique. And there's another video I have using some other stencils if you look through my video streams. And since we're talking about videos, a thumbs up is always appreciated. I'm sure you guys know that. Now I'm taking my brush and I'm moving it up closer to the little circles in the middle. And this is where you want to go slow, take your time, get a nice line of color, and then remove some of that color off your brush. But when you're doing this line work, that's when you take the time to just get a nice line, and you can do it. During my last road trip, the last few ones actually, I've been talking about, people ask about embossing. And don't get offended, but I think embossing is kind of like training wheels on a bike. I think it restricts you a little bit. And I think if you can take the training wheels off and try it without, I think you'll see a different look and you might like that look better. It might take a little bit longer, so you just have to decide what look you want, or do you want to challenge yourself and see where it goes. But I think when you're not embossing, you get a more gradient look. But it's completely a different look. But for me, it's a pain in the rump to emboss. And I also like the look of not embossing. So I'm overextending a little bit on that color. Now this petal had a line in the center, and I'm like, I don't need that line there. I'm just going to make it one big petal. So just don't be afraid to change those little things. And I talk about that in the online class that I'm doing too. So you might be asking, will this technique work with my Tombow markers or my Zigs or my alt-new watercolor markers? This works with any watercolor medium. But I can't say it enough, is once you put down some color, you want to take the rest off your brush, and that way you get that sweet spot, that lighter area on what you're coloring. And when you create that lighter area, it is pleasing to the eye. It looks like you have a shadow that you didn't have to work for. And it just gives you, I mean, if you like the card, it just, having the light and the dark, it just looks good. So that's the story on that. So this is what one color with that ink looks like. And now I decided to use brown on the leaves, petals. And sometimes I'll take, this is the leaf, sometimes I'll make the leaf a petal as well, but I'm going to use the leaf as a leaf on this coloring project. So I thought brown would be a nice contrast. And I was just trying to think what I was going to say. Sorry. But I don't like to edit out all this stuff because, I don't know, I'm not perfect and I don't communicate well, and it's who I am. And then when you meet me in person, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, she is who she is. So anyway, that's why I don't like to use filters when I take photos, because then you'd see me in person, you'd be like, oh my God, she's so much older. So anyway, that's the story on me. So I'm just doing the exact same thing on the leaves as I did on the petals. And in this project, I'll use 2 of the different distress inks. And because the ink that I use the dauber with shines through, I don't need to use another color. I feel like this is complete enough. I am going to take a colored pencil just to the tips of the leaves only. And then I'll be using one of those Karen, you can use any marker, but I'm using the Karen to just color the centers. So I'm just putting a line of color and then a brush just to pull that color down. But you know, you really don't even need to do that. You could just color those areas. Why even use a brush to bring it down? I was still in the painting mood, but you really don't even need to do that. So it's really super easy to finish off these centers. And I brought in my little hand here because I just feel like my hands are so scraggly looking and I needed to hold the paper. So that's what I'm doing. It's comes in handy sometimes. Now here is the finished card. Before I added some colored pencil accents to the leaves and the centers of the flowers, and that's all I did. Normally I would add more, but now here's the Like You die cut. I glued the inside of the letters down first, and then I cut some fun foam and laid it in on the card base, and then I stacked up with cardstock underneath the Like You. I die cut gray cardstock, glued it all together, colored some twine, wrapped it around, and then I used a very sharp tip and I kind of went over the sentiment just to give it a little bit more color, and popped it on my card, and that's it. It was really, you can see the stacked Like You there, but it was very simple, really relaxing, just so fun. Here's all the supplies that I used. Use any distress inks or any watercolor medium. But this ink I love, and that stencil is just gorgeous. It's just so fun. You could just do one on a card with this big die cut. Super easy. All right, well, thanks so much. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in class maybe. Have a good weekend.